She floated in silence. The blue glow of the swimming pool cut through the darkness. But the woman at the bottom did not move. It was August 27th, 1994. The Los Angeles heat pressed down like a heavy blanket. Just hours before, she drank wine. She laughed. Now, the only sound was the hum of the pool filter. Here is the deal. This woman was not a stranger. She was the secret strength behind a music dynasty. She was the mother of the famous group, the Three Ts. She was the former wife of a Jackson 5 legend. She left that chaotic life to find her own simple joy. But instead of peace, she found a man with a heart of stone. But wait, it gets worse. The wealthy businessman standing on the dry concrete said she just sank. He claimed he tried to save her, but dead bodies tell no lies. The coroner found 50 cuts on her lips. There were deep bruises on her head. The muscles in her neck were torn. This was no accident. This was a fight for life. How does a beloved mother end up beaten and drowned in a backyard pool? The water washes away the blood, but it cannot wash away the truth. Gary, Indiana was not a place for soft dreams. It was a city of steel. The air smelled like burning sulfur. The sky was often gray with smoke from the factories. Men walked with heavy boots and tired backs. They worked in the mills until their bodies gave out. This was the world the Jackson family wanted to escape. Inside a small house on Jackson Street, the air did not smell like smoke. It smelled like determination. It vibrated with music. Joe Jackson was strict. He pushed his sons hard. He knew the world was cold to young black boys. He wanted them to be undeniable. Michael danced until he dropped. Jermaine sang until his throat burned. But Tito Jackson was different. He was the anchor. Picture this. The stage lights are blinding. The crowd is screaming so loud the floor shakes. Michael is spinning like a top. But look at Tito. He stands still. He is the calm in the middle of the hurricane. His large hands grip the guitar. He strums the rhythm that holds the whole song together. He does not need to scream. His presence is enough. He was the quiet storm. The Jackson 5 became a sensation. They traded the cold winters of the Midwest for the golden sun of California. They moved to Los Angeles in 1968. Here is the deal. Los Angeles was a different planet. The palm trees looked like tall green giants. The cars on the street were not rusty trucks. They were convertibles with chrome that shined like mirrors. The ocean breeze felt soft against their skin. The Jacksons had made it. They were royalty. Tito enrolled at Fairfax High School. He was a superstar. He was on television. Girls screamed his name at concerts. But inside the halls of Fairfax, he was just a teenager. He walked to class with his books. He felt the same awkwardness as everyone else. Fame builds a wall around you. Tito just wanted someone to climb over it. That is when he saw her. Her name was Dolores Martez. Her friends called her Dee Dee. She walked with a confidence that caught his eye. But Dee Dee was not from Hollywood royalty. She was the definition of an underdog. Dee Dee was born in New York City. Her blood carried the heat and rhythm of the Dominican Republic. But her early life was not a song. It was a struggle. Her parents split up when she was just a baby. Her home broke apart before she could even remember it whole. She knew what it felt like to be left behind. Her mother was a warrior. She had to be. She raised Dee Dee and her 3 sisters alone. They did not have money for fancy clothes or expensive lessons. They had survival instincts. In 1968, the same year the Jacksons arrived, Dee Dee's mother packed their bags. She moved her 4 girls to Los Angeles. She was chasing a better life. She wanted them to breathe easier. Gravity pulls us toward the people who understand our silence. Tito and Dee Dee found each other in the crowded hallways of Fairfax High. They came from opposite sides of the track. Tito had the world at his feet. Dee Dee had the weight of the world on her shoulders. But they clicked. Tito saw a girl who did not care about his fame. She did not care about the hit records or the money. She liked the boy with the gentle eyes. She liked the way he listened. Dee Dee saw a boy who was not just a pop star. She saw a young man who valued family above everything else. They fell in love fast. It was the kind of love that ignores the rules. They were seniors in high school. Most kids were worrying about prom or college applications. Tito and Dee Dee were planning a life. But wait, it gets deeper. The world wanted Tito to date a famous actress or a singer. The press wanted a power couple. Tito did not care. He wanted the girl from Fairfax. He wanted the girl with the Dominican fire and the New York toughness. In June of 1972, they graduated from high school. They did not wait. They got married almost immediately. They were barely adults. They were 18 years old. They looked like children playing house, but their commitment was iron. They started their family right away. Taj was born first, then Terrell, then TJ. These three boys would grow up to become the Group 3 Tons. Tito and Dee Dee built a fortress around their children. They wanted to protect them from the madness of the entertainment industry. Tito bought a large house. He filled it with love. He filled it with music. Dee Dee was the queen of that castle. She was the glue. While Tito was on the road touring, Dee Dee was there. She wiped the tears. She checked the homework. She kept the Jackson legacy grounded in reality. For a while, it seemed perfect. It seemed like they had beaten the odds. The boy from the steel town and the girl from the broken home had built a paradise. But here is the deal with paradise. Snakes always find a way in. The music business is a monster that eats time. It demands long nights in the studio. It demands months away on tour. It demands pieces of your soul. Tito was a Jackson. The demand on him was immense. The distance began to grow, not all at once, but inch by inch. Silence began to fill the empty spaces in the big house. The phone calls got shorter. The lonely nights got longer. Dee Dee had everything money could buy, but you cannot buy companionship. You cannot buy the feeling of being seen. The love story that started in the bright halls of Fairfax High was heading toward a shadow. They had climbed the mountain together, but the air at the top is thin. It is hard to breathe. And when you are fighting for breath, you start to make choices you never thought you would make. The cracks in the foundation were small at first, just hairline fractures. But pressure makes cracks grow, and the pressure was about to get heavy. The dream was ending. The nightmare was waking up. The world did not just watch the Jacksons. The world wanted to be the Jacksons. By the late 1970s, the family from Gary, Indiana, had conquered the globe. They were not just a band anymore. They were a dynasty. They broke barriers that had stood for decades. Before them, Black families did not appear on lunchboxes in suburban America. They did not have their own cartoon show on Saturday mornings. The Jacksons changed the color of pop culture. Tito and Dee Dee were right in the center of the storm. Picture this. The 70s turned into the 80s. The music got louder. The hair got bigger. The money poured in like a summer rainstorm. Tito was no longer the boy looking for a connection in the hallway of Fairfax High. He was music royalty. He loved the fine things in life. Tito had a passion for machines. He loved the smell of gasoline and old leather. He collected vintage cars. He bought classic Fords and gleaming Rolls Royces. He did not just drive them. He fixed them. His hands could play a guitar riff that made millions of people dance. But those same hands could take apart an engine and put it back together. Dee Dee embraced the life too. She was the queen of their world. She was stunning. She dressed in the finest silks and furs. When she walked into a room, heads turned. She had a smile that could light up a dark restaurant. She hosted parties that people talked about for months. The champagne flowed. The music never stopped. They had everything. They had the big house. They had the staff. They had the adoration of fans from Tokyo to London. But here is the deal. The most important thing they built was not the bank account. It was the legacy. Dee Dee was raising 3 sons, Taj, Terrell, and TJ. She was determined to give them a normal life inside a crazy world. She was a strict mother. She checked their grades. She made sure they said please and thank you. She did not want them to be spoiled brats. She wanted them to be men. The boys adored her. She was their safe harbor. When the paparazzi helicopters buzzed over the house, Dee Dee pulled the curtains. She turned up the television. She made the world go away. She was the calm voice in the middle of the Jackson hurricane. And the hurricane was getting stronger. In 1984, the Jacksons launched the Victory Tour. It was a monster. It was one of the biggest tours in music history. They played in massive stadiums. They broke ticket sales records. The brothers reunited on stage, and the energy was nuclear. Picture the scene at Dodger Stadium. 55,000 people are screaming. The sound is like a jet engine taking off. The The lights flood the stage. Tito stands there with his guitar. He looks out at the sea of faces. He is on top of the mountain. The air up there is rare. Few human beings ever taste that kind of power. The tour grossed $75 million. In 1984, that was an astronomical number. They were the kings of the industry. But wait, gravity is always working. Success has a price tag. You do not pay with money. You pay with time. You pay with distance. Tito was gone for long stretches. The road is a lonely place. Even when you are surrounded by people, you sleep in strange beds. You live on a bus or a plane. You miss the birthdays. You miss the first steps. You miss the quiet Tuesday nights on the couch. Dee Dee was home. She was managing the mansion. She was raising the boys. She was keeping the family image polished and perfect. But the house was big, and when the parties ended and the guests went home, the silence was loud. The press saw the smiles. They saw the red carpets. They saw the happy family photos in the magazines. But photos freeze a moment in time. They do not show you what happens 5 minutes later. Here is the truth about high school sweethearts. You grow up together, but sometimes you grow apart. The boy Tito was at 18 was not the man he was at 35. The girl Dee Dee was in high school had become a woman who wanted more than just to wait. The cracks started deep in the foundation. They were invisible at first. A missed phone call here, a cold argument there. The pressure of being a Jackson is heavy. It crushes weak things. It tests strong things. Tito and Dee Dee had a bond of iron. But even iron rust if you leave it out in the rain too long. By the late 80s, the victory tour was over. The lights had dimmed. The adrenaline faded. And in the quiet aftermath, they had to look at each other. They had to ask the hard question, is love enough? The fans did not know. The world saw a fairy tale. They saw the handsome guitarist and his beautiful wife. They saw the 3 talented sons who were starting to learn instruments of their own. But behind the gates of their estate, the fairy tale was fraying. The distance between them was no longer just miles on a map. It was emotional. While the world saw a smile, the shadows were growing. The golden cage was beautiful, but it was still a cage. Dee Dee wanted to breathe. She wanted to be seen for who she was, not just whose wife she was. The end of the marriage did not happen with a bang. It happened with a whisper. It was a slow drift. In 1988, the unthinkable happened. The couple that survived high school, fame, and the music industry decided to let go. They filed for divorce. It shocked the community. It shocked the fans. But for Dee Dee, it was a chance to find herself again. She stepped out of the shadow of the Jackson name. She walked away from the safety of the dynasty. She was ready to start a new chapter. She wanted simple happiness. She wanted love without the spotlight, but she did not know that the darkness was waiting for her. She walked out of the golden cage and into the path of a predator. The silence was coming, and this time, it would be permanent. The year was 1988. The divorce papers were signed. The ink was dry. Dee Dee Jackson walked out of the courtroom and into a new world. She left the protective walls of the Jackson compound. She left the security teams and the gates. She wanted freedom. She wanted to stand on her own 2 feet. But here is the deal with freedom. It has no safety net. Dee Dee was 33 years old. She was beautiful. She was the mother of 3 growing boys. She had her whole life ahead of her. She did not want to be lonely. She wanted a companion. She wanted someone who loved her for Dee Dee, not for the famous last name she used to carry. She met a man. He was a wealthy businessman. He seemed perfect on paper. He had money. He had charm. He had a large home with a swimming pool in the backyard. He offered her a place to relax. He offered her a glass of wine and a listening ear. To the outside world, he looked like a catch, but appearances are a trap. Picture this. It is the summer of 1994. The calendar turns to August. The heat in Los Angeles is suffocating. It is the kind of heat that makes the air shimmer above the asphalt. Dee Dee spent more time with this businessman. She trusted him. She let her guard down. She thought she had found a safe harbor after the storm of her divorce. She did not see the warning signs. She did not see the jealousy or the control. She only saw the smile. But wait, gravity pulls hardest when you least expect it. It was Saturday, August 27th, 1994. The sun went down, but the heat remained. The air was thick. Dee Dee was at the businessman's home. They sat by the pool. The water was still. The pool lights turned the water into a glowing blue jewel in the dark yard. They drank wine. They talked. But something in the air shifted. We do not know the exact word that started the fire. We do not know if it was a shout or a whisper. But we know that the laughter stopped. The silence of the night was broken by the sound of a struggle. This was not a movie scene. There was no dramatic music. There was only the sound of fear. The businessman later told a simple story. He said they were swimming. He said Dee Dee was comfortable in the water. He claimed she dipped under the surface and just never came back up. He said it was a tragic accident. He said he tried to pull her out, but she was too heavy. He painted a picture of a calm, sad ending. But here's the truth. Dead bodies tell no lies. When the police arrived, the scene was chaotic. The water in the pool was disturbed. A woman lay on the concrete deck. She was cold. Her breath was gone. The mother of the 3 T's was dead at the age of 39. The silence that followed was heavy. It crushed the air out of the room. The Jackson family was in shock. Tito was devastated. Her sons, Taj, Terrell, and TJ, were shattered. Their rock was gone. Their guide was gone. But wait, it gets worse. The coroner examined Dee Dee. The science of death is precise. It does not care about money or excuses. It looks at the facts, and the facts screamed of violence. If a person drowns by accident, there are specific signs. But Dee Dee's body told a story of a war. The coroner found injuries that did not make sense for a simple drowning. There were deep bruises on her head. These were not small bumps. They were signs of blunt force. Someone or something had struck her hard. The examination went deeper. The muscles in her neck were damaged. They were torn. This happens when someone is strangled. This happens when someone fights for air while hands are wrapped around their throat. But the most chilling detail was on her face. The coroner found cuts on her lips. Not 1 or 2. There were 50 cuts. 50. Picture that for a second. 50 small cuts on the inside and outside of her lips. This happens when a hand is pressed hard over a mouth to silence a scream. It happens when teeth grind against skin in a desperate struggle to breathe. This was not a peaceful sink into the deep end. This was a battle for survival. Dee Dee Martez Jackson was a girl from New York. She was raised by a fighter. In those final, terrifying moments in the blue water, she did not just fade away. She fought. She kicked. She scratched. She tried to stay above the surface for her boys. She was up against a man who was strong, a man who was angry. The water became a weapon. The pool became a tomb. The businessman stuck to his story. He said it was accidental. He said he was the victim of a tragedy. He used his wealth to build a wall of defense. He hired lawyers. He spun narratives. He tried to wash the blood away with his money. But the evidence was etched into Dee Dee's skin. The bruises were a map of her pain. The cuts were a testimony of her silence. The police looked at the businessman. They looked at the inconsistencies in his story. He said she could not swim well, but her family knew she could. He said he called for help immediately, but the timeline had gaps. The fall was complete. The girl who met Tito in the halls of Fairfax High, the woman who raised 3 musical prodigies, was gone. She was taken by the very thing she sought a new life. The news broke the next morning. The headline hit the Jackson family like a bomb. Ex-wife of Tito Jackson found dead in pool. The words felt cold. They felt impossible. For Taj, Terrell, and TJ, the world stopped spinning. They were young men now, standing on the edge of their own fame. They were recording music. They were following in their father's footsteps. They needed their mother more than ever. Instead, they got a phone call that tore their hearts out. The house where she raised them was now empty. The phone would never ring with her voice again. The seat at the dinner table would stay empty. The silence in the deep end of that pool rippled out. It touched everyone who knew her. It turned the bright California sun into a gray shadow. The dynasty had faced rumors. They had faced scandals. They had faced bad press, but they had never faced a murder. The water washed away the physical evidence at the scene, but it could not wash away the truth written on her body. The fight for justice was about to begin, and the Jackson family, led by 3 grieving sons, was ready to go to war. The sun rose over Los Angeles on August 28, 1994. It was a Sunday morning. The paper boys threw newspapers onto driveways. The coffee brewed in kitchens across the city. But for one family, the world had stopped turning. The headlines were short. They were cold. Jackson, ex-wife, drowns in pool. To the public, it was just another tragic story from the hills of Hollywood. People read the words and shook their heads. They thought it was a party gone wrong. They thought it was the price of a fast life. The news report said she had been drinking. They said she was swimming late at night. The story was simple. It was an accident. But here is the deal. The news cameras captured the yellow tape, but they missed the truth. Inside the Jackson family, there was no acceptance. There was only confusion. And then there was anger. Tito Jackson heard the news and his knees hit the floor. He knew Dee Dee. He knew the mother of his children. She was strong. She was athletic. She knew how to swim. The idea that she just sank to the bottom of a pool did not make sense. It felt like a lie. But the spotlight is a blinding light. It distorts everything it touches. Because Dee Dee was connected to the Jackson dynasty, the press descended like vultures. They camped outside the house. They pointed long lenses at the windows. They wanted a picture of the grief. They did not care about the justice. They cared about the story. Picture the three sons, Taj, Tareel, and TJ. They were young men. They were in their early 20s. They were on the verge of their own superstardom. They had spent months in the studio recording their debut album. They were ready to show the world that the Jackson talent lived in their blood. Instead of planning a release party, they were planning a funeral. The pain was a physical weight. It crushed their chests. Their mother was their biggest cheerleader. She was the one who told them they could be anything. Now, she was a headline. She was a statistic. But wait, it gets worse. The man who owned the pool was still walking free. The wealthy businessman told his story to the police, and for a long time, it seemed like they believed him. He had money. He had influence. In Los Angeles, those two things can buy a lot of silence. He claimed he was a hero. He said he pulled her out. He said he performed CPR. He played the part of the devastated boyfriend, but dead bodies tell no lies. The autopsy report came back, and it was a bombshell. It sat on a desk in the coroner's office, and the details screamed for attention. The 50 cuts on her lip, the deep bruising on her skull, the torn muscles in her neck. The coroner looked at the businessman's story. Then he looked at the body. The two things did not match. This was not a drowning. This was a beatdown. Yet, the wheels of justice were stuck in the mud. The district attorney did not file charges right away. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. This is the hard truth about the justice system. It is not a straight line. It is a winding road, and sometimes you hit a dead end. For 4 years, the businessman lived his life. He drove his cars. He swam in that same pool. He lived in the house where Dee Dee took her last breath. The public moved on. The news cycle found new scandals. The O.J. Simpson trial took over the television screens of America. The world forgot about the woman in the water, but the 3 T's did not forget. They poured their pain into their music. They released their album, Brotherhood, in 1995. It was a massive hit. They sold millions of copies. Fans screamed their names in London and Paris. But when the boys went back to their hotel rooms, the silence was waiting for them. They used their voice to keep her memory alive. They demanded answers. They knew their mother did not leave them by accident. They knew she was taken. Gravity pulls hardest when you are waiting for the truth. The contrast was sharp. On one side, you had a grieving family pleading for action. On the other side, you had a wealthy man hiding behind his lawyers. The media called it a mystery, but it was not a mystery. It was a cover-up. The water in the pool was clear, but the system was murky. It took a mountain of pressure to finally move the case forward. The Jacksons had to fight the very system that was supposed to protect them. The silence in the deep end was over. The noise of the courtroom was about to begin. It took 4 long years for the silence to break. The businessman thought his money built a wall too high to climb. He thought the world had forgotten the woman in the water, but he underestimated the 3 young men she raised. Here is the deal. Justice is slow, but it has a long memory. In 1998, the police finally arrested the businessman. The courtroom was packed. The jury did not look at his bank account. They looked at the evidence. They saw the 50 cuts. They felt the pain of a family left behind. The gavel hit the wood with a sound like a gunshot. Guilty. He was sent to prison for second-degree murder. But a prison sentence does not heal a broken heart. Taj, Terrell, and T.J. Jackson did not let the tragedy define them. They let it fuel them. Their album, Brotherhood, was not just a collection of songs. It was a love letter to Dee Dee. It sold millions of copies around the world. But for the boys, the numbers did not matter. They sang to honor the woman who wiped their tears and checked their homework. Picture this. Today, the three T's are grown men. They are fathers. They look into the eyes of their own children and see the reflection of their mother. Dee Dee Martez Jackson started as an underdog from New York City. She became the matriarch of a dynasty. She taught the world that you can stand next to the brightest stars and still shine with your own light. Her life was stolen in the deep end of a pool, but her spirit refused to sink. She lives on in the music. She lives on in the faces of her grandchildren. The predator took her breath, but he could not take her legacy. Some stories end without closure, but dignity doesn't need applause. Do you remember the music of the three T's or the strength of the Jackson family during this time? Share your memories in the comments below.